Oh gosh. All right. Well, hello everybody. Today we're exploring the power of nature journaling, one of the most effective ways to help students slow down, notice the world around them, and document their learning over time. Now, whether you're completely new to nature journaling or looking for ways to deepen your practice in your classroom, I think this conversation is going to offer so many practical ideas for getting started, to build consistent routines, how to integrate art, and really using journals as a tool for assessment and documentation. So, joining me today is Billie Jo Reid, who is an environmental educator, nature journaling facilitator, and founder of Pine and Ponders Outdoors. I love the name, by the way. She is so passionate about helping people reconnect with nature journaling through curiosity and observation and wonder. Working with schools, libraries, and camps and community groups, Billie Jo uses nature journaling as a tool to support learning across the curriculum while fostering deeper connections to the natural world. And her approach encourages participants to slow down, notice more, ask questions, and document their discoveries using words, pictures, and numbers. When she's not leading workshops or supporting educators, you will likely find her nature journaling on a trail, beside a pond, or exploring new places around the world. I mean, holy moly, she has been busy. Recently, she has co-led a nature journaling expedition to the Galapagos Islands and Alaska. Unreal. Through her work, Billie Jo hopes to inspire others to find wonder in the everyday and discover that nature is one of our greatest teachers. And Billie Jo, we have often been in Banff together for the National
Yeah.
Outdoors Learning Conference. So we have gotten to know each other well. I am just so grateful that you're here with us today. It's so nice
Thank
to
you
see
so
you.
much. I'm really, really excited to be here. Yeah, I'm super pumped. So thank you so much for the invite, and I'm really, really excited to be here and just like nerd out for the next hour a bit because I'm really happy about that. So anybody I can nerd out with, I'm kind of in.
I love it. And you will notice, everybody who's listening or watching us, that we have very similar energies, Billie Jo. So this is going
Yeah.
to be, I'm sure, very fast paced, and we're going to be
A
super
lot of hand
excited.
gestures.
Lots of hand talking, lots of laughing. This is going to be so jam packed, and I'm so excited. So my first question is going to
Okay.
be, how do you define nature journaling? Right? What
Great
is it?
question.
And is
Great
it
question.
different than simply drawing outside?
Yes, yes. So I think for me, I think there's a lot of different ways that folks think about nature journaling. And so one of the things that folks, when I first meet them, they think like, oh, it's journaling, right? Like just it's writing about my emotions and it's writing about like sort of what we did during the day, which it can be. It
Hmm.
can be those things. And so, but for me, nature journaling is about connecting. And so it's about connecting with something, a phenomenon that you are finding in nature, whether that's a rock or a stick or a flower or a bird or a moose or whatever that is, and taking the time in that space to notice what's going on. And so it might be that you're noticing a little bit closer, like that the dandelion, in fact, does not have round edges on its petals, that
Hmm.
it's actually sort of like a serrated, irregular shape at the end, which is something you may never have noticed before. I want you to notice that that plant that you're sitting in front of has actually had several visitors while you were sitting there. Or that moose chews weird every sort of 5 seconds or so, or it's grinding its teeth in a different way than what you and I would sort of eat. And so the power of the nature journal for me is to sit and be given permission to sit in that space to really notice what's going on in that. And my friend Jack or John Muir Laws says like when we add words and pictures and numbers, our brain is thinking in different ways. So if we just write, our brain is thinking in one way. But when we add a picture to it, it's doing it something different. And then when we add numbers to it, it's doing something different. And so when you take the time to combine all of those different ways of thinking together, for me, you get this really holistic approach to what it is that you're sort of looking at. And some kids will say to me, like, well, I'm not a good drawer. And I was like, well, you don't have to be a good drawer, right? So I give this as an example.
Hmm.
So I don't live in the city. So if I go down to like Brampton or Mississauga and it's lunchtime and I want to go grab a hot chocolate at the Tim Hortons, I had this moment where a teacher was like, you go down this street and then this street and then you take a left on this street and this street. Like I knew the streets. And I was like, I just went, "Oh, sure." No idea what that person was talking about because I don't live there. So what
Hmm.
I needed was a picture. And so the first thing I did was I remembered what street it was on. And then, yes, in that moment, I was able to pull out my map and then be able to figure it out. So I always say to people, like, think about when you're talking to somebody and you're explaining something and they look at you like you have three heads. And then you go, I'll draw you a picture. And it really sometimes that picture is more of a diagram. And then that person goes, I get it. Because now you have created a situation where you're pulling in words, you're pulling in a picture, you're pulling in numbers, and now people go, I get it now. So sometimes just that one way of doing it doesn't always get the full picture. But I also want to be super clear that if you're a writer, then write. And if you're a
Hmm.
drawer, draw. But encourage yourself to try out some of those different things because it's kind of magical when you get the other parts of your brain kind of involved in that. And the next part of that piece with nature journaling is the I wonder and that it reminds me of. And so now we're creating a space where we can just ask lots of questions. And I am always like, I want to be really clear that it's not about answering the questions. It's about giving
Hmm.
possible answers, based on your evidence of what you're observing, based on some things that you know, and what could kind of come out of that. And then if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, yes, of course there's opportunities to pull out field guides and do deep dives into your research, but sometimes you can just ask the questions and let them sort of be in the space because I think there's this thing where little kids ask 20,000 questions. And we as educators are like, oh my gosh. Like, I think there was somebody on a YouTube who like clicked how many questions they were asked in like the first 20 minutes of class. And it was some kind of absorbent number. So then we get to a space with our kids where we kind of tell them to stop asking questions. And then kids get nervous about asking questions because they don't want to ask a dumb question and they don't want to get laughed at. So for me, the nature, like, let's celebrate the questions.
Hmm.
Like, get us back to asking questions and to being really curious about what's going on. And, Jack always says, like, when you're curious, like, there's a hit of dopamine. And we know that because there's no time where you get together with friends, and it doesn't matter if you're talking about a flower in your garden or the score of the Canada game the other day when they were, we thought they were losing 2-0, and then all of a sudden it got
Hmm.
crazy, and then but now you're with a friend and you're like, did you see how he headed it in and blah 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 and it got crazy. You're nerding out. That's dopamine releasing because you were exchanging in something that is similar and it's active and you're like asking questions. Did you see what happens with that when it went in? Blah 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 blah. Like all of that stuff. So when you're nature journaling, you're just doing the same thing, but with nature. And
Hmm.
it's this amazing space. And then you're asking folks to make connections. And that it reminds me of, I find people struggle with this a little bit in terms of like, what do I do with that statement? And
Hmm.
I'm always like, it's anything. So it can be as simple as a kid saying to me, Miss Billie Jo, like this leaf reminds me of an umbrella. And I'm like, cool. What is the same about an umbrella, right? Well,
Hmm.
they both protect from rain. All right. Do we think that this leaf could be doing the same thing? Well, maybe an insect is underneath the leaf. Well, let's look. And then, sometimes, lo and behold, guess who's living underneath the leaf, right? Maybe
Hmm.
there's some eggs there, or there's some, baby larva, or whatever that is. And then they have this moment of going, oh, do you think that that's where we got the idea from? And you're like, probably, right? And so it's really interesting. Or, I say to kids, like, it's not just about making connections to other inanimate objects, but does it invoke some kind of memory or some kind of emotional connection to it? So is it a time when you've been outside with somebody, or what does that look like? And so a little girl said to me, I think she was like grade 5, maybe, she said, well, the pine cone I'm looking at reminds me of Christmas and reminds me of my grandma because we always
Mm.
paint pine cones together at Christmas. To me, that is unbelievably deep because that kid got to relive that moment and that tradition of doing that with her grandma. Another kid was like, this feather reminds me of going hunting. I go hunting with my dad and my uncle, and we hunt birds. And so I've seen all these like really cool bird feathers. And I'm like, brilliant, right?
Mhm.
Like, isn't that an amazing connection? So your connections can be emotional, they can be religious, they can be cultural, or they can be like based in science to like another inanimate object. Like the connection
Mhm.
can be anything. And it's funny, we do this a lot without even recognizing it. And I think that's also really interesting. So
Yeah.
that's a very long-winded answer to what I think nature journaling is. But at its core, it is connection
Mhm.
to something that you're sitting in front of. It's giving yourself the opportunity and the time to ask questions and make deep connections. So to me, at the core, that to me is what nature journaling is and why I think it's such a really great cross-curricular tool that can be used across the entire school programming. And so because of those sort of fundamental parts of it.
Yeah. And I think as you were talking, as you know, as a primary teacher, I'm making the connections to all the UDL aspects there. When you
Mhm.
said words, pictures, numbers, and it's kind of, pick your own adventure, right? So
Yes.
I can start because I'm that person, Billy Joe, that would go, I can't draw a tree.
Yeah, yeah,
That I would get all sweaty and nervous and maybe shut down a little bit.
yeah,
But if my teacher, Miss Billy Joe, said, it's okay, Lauren, start with words first or
yeah,
numbers. Awesome. You've
yeah,
got me. And I'm not going to shut down. And then as my confidence grows, maybe I would start to include a few pictures. But
yeah,
because that wasn't necessarily the main goal at first, I have a more confident entry point
yeah,
to feel like
yeah.
I'm part of the group in that
Yeah, and I
activity.
give that, and I also, I'm going to be honest, I do usually encourage a picture first, but I frame it like this.
Hmm.
Okay, I say I usually start with a picture because it grounds my page. It gives
Mm.
me a starting point, and so that is you can trace it, you can do a rubbing. Or I give sometimes some tips and tricks of like if you have a pine cone on my big whiteboard, this is maybe what I would sort of think about in terms of drawing it, right?
Mhm.
And I say, think about it more as a diagram, right? So, or if you're looking at it and it's really, there's a lot going on. So this flower has a lot of petals and it has a lot of leaves and it has a stem and there's 17,000 of them and I don't know where to start. Break it apart. And I
Mm.
say, not physically break it apart, but I said, look at just one petal. And now I want you to look at the shape of that one petal. And the kid will be like, it's kind of like a triangle. I go, brilliant, dry triangle, right? What is the shape of the leaf? Well, it's kind of like more like a rounded diamond. Done. We're writing a diamond. So breaking it down into smaller pieces, but it grounds it on the page. But
Hmm.
then I'm also like, yeah, you can label it however you want. So I'm like, I'm a scatterbrain. And so I will show them my nature journals. I'm like, listen, this is a hot mess of my brain on the paper, and that is totally fine. But if you're somebody who likes to be really organized, then be really organized.
Hmm.
And if you want to write full sentences that describe what it is you're seeing, have at it. If you want to write bullet points down the side to describe what it is that you're seeing, have at it.
Hmm.
If you're like me and you're like, labels and arrows are coming off everywhere and this is what's happening, I go, have at it. Because I always say to my students, there's no rules. And I say, this is the one thing in your life that you are going to do that you can't mess it up.
Mm.
Can't mess it up. And I'll say to them as well, like, there's going to be this little this little thing coming in called the inner critic, and it's going to be on your shoulder, and it's going to say, "You're a terrible drawer, and look
Mm.
at so and so, and they're doing a better job." I go, "We are going to say, 'Welcome to the party, ma'am or sir,' and sit up on my shoulder and watch what I'm about to do today." Because I said, don't let that get in your way of
Mhm.
fun. And so I said, you know, if you don't know how to spell a word, what are you going to do? And they're like, ask. And I go, no, you're not. I said, because I'm not going to tell you. And they're like, what? And I was like, sound it out. I was like, who cares if you spell it wrong? I go, spelling isn't going to be the thing that gets in our way of fun today.
Yeah.
So they'll be like, can I have an eraser on the back of my pencil? I go, no, I'm not going to switch that out for you. And they're like, what? And I go, you got to learn to love what you do. I was like, there's no animal. Well, and I shouldn't say that because now I've been to the Galapagos and boobies really do just stand there and do nothing. But in most cases, most animals are on their own agenda and they are not going to pose for you so you can sketch it. So I said, you
Right.
just need to roll with it. And then I give them examples. I'm like, look, I only got that it had a black head and a blue back and a brown tummy. That's it. That's all I
Mhm.
got to say. And then they're like, oh, and I go, and I'm like, these are in my journal. These are real world situations. And then I really blow their mind and I say, sometimes I go in with pen. And they're like, what? And I go, yeah, you can't erase pen, can ya? And so I always say this is a stress-free zone. So if I see people erasing a lot, I go, that tells
Mhm.
me that you're stressing. And
Mhm.
that isn't what this is about. This is about the opposite of that. So I go to those individual kiddos and I say, stress-free zone. And then one kid goes, I'm writing that in my journal. And then across the top of their journal, they go, Billie Jo said this is a stress-free zone. And I was like, yeah, that's perfect. And then I'll say to the kid, stop erasing. Stop
Mhm.
erasing. Get out of your head. I go, just take this moment. And I said, let it go. And then, of course, I sing Elsa, and then it's very funny. And, we sort of move on. And then I come back, and the kid has a full page. And I
Mm.
go, huh, look what happened when you just let that go. And they were like, you know what? This has been really fun. And I was like, yeah. Because nature journaling also isn't just about connection, but it's about also really letting go of your own, I don't know, like self, like confidence, like just letting it
Mhm.
go.
Mhm.
And it's like whatever's on the paper is whatever happened in the moment. And you can choose to like pull that piece of paper out and scrap it, but then you miss that was a moment in your history.
Yeah.
So don't do that,
Yeah.
right? I have a really great example. Jack and I were just in the Galapagos Islands and we were sitting on the plane together and we're going to the Galapagos and we're like, all right, we got an idea. We are going to journal out this map. We are going to map out all the islands and then we're going to create like a chart that says every date and where we're going. And then we're going to color code it with the lines on the map. And we're so pumped. Like, people don't want to sit near us on the plane, right? And we're like, yeah, we're so great. Writing down all the dates, we're getting it in there, and we get to the end, and I go, we're missing a date. And he's like, what? I go, yeah, I don't think we did this right.
Oh,
And
no.
he's like, oh no. And I was like, oh, yeah, no, we screwed up the dates. We started on the wrong day. And so instead of like ripping it out and scratching, I was like, Jack, I'm just putting in brackets the real date. And on the bottom of it, I was like, well, Jack and I were on the plane and we screwed up. And that's in my nature journal now because
Yeah.
that was a moment that I will never forget just how excited we were to do this whole thing. And then we totally messed it up by a day. Like, who cares, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's not going to be the end of my nature journaling experience, right? So for
Mhm.
me, that's how I look at it. Some people are very perfectionist and want it to be beautiful and want it to be perfect. And if that's you, go for it. That's you. But from my perspective, especially with students, there's already so much pressure on them to do certain things and to be at certain levels and to do all this stuff that I want to give them a space where they can just release that and
Mhm.
have a moment of connection and creativity and wonder that is their own, if
Yeah.
that makes any
Oh,
sense.
for sure.
And so that's kind of how I help get past some of those things, right?
Yeah.
And then if they're little and I see that it's a because I'm able to in that perspective then be able to move my way around and
Hmm.
visit each of the students and have a conversation with them about their nature journal. Because I'm going to be honest, when it's the first time they're ever nature journaling, they're on a tarp with me. Like we've gotten something and we're coming back together because I'm not in the mood of making like that insane because they're in their brains, they're like, it's recess. And you're like, it's learning time. And so, yeah, I have that. And I say to teachers, like, don't expect to go outside. And you know this with sit spots and
Hmm.
expect them to sit in a sit spot for the very first time and magical things are that's not going to happen. So like
No.
stop putting that pressure on ourselves as educators as well, and that's going to be in baby steps. So yes, I have a beautiful tarp and it's gigantic and they can lay on their tummies and they can get warm from the
Hmm.
sun and all this other stuff. But I can also move around and have really great conversations with them. And then hopefully the teacher continues it. And then those kids are eventually able to get into a sit spot
Hmm.
and be able to do that on their own once they kind of have that confidence and skills. If I go around and I start to notice that a kid is really struggling, and because where they're at in their learning is not in a space where they can write full sentence
Hmm.
questions, or they're really struggling with whatever it is they're doing, I always ask, would it be okay if I wrote your um, your sentence down for you, and then
Hmm.
you can take the time to copy it? And they go, yes, I would really appreciate that. Brilliant. Let's do that together. And because everybody's nature journaling and that nature journaling is meeting every those one of those kids at a different space, then there's lots of kids that are able to work together in a partnership to help each
Hmm.
other or, whatever it's happening. And that gives me some time to sit with that kiddo and be a scribe. And like, why wouldn't I be a scribe for that kid? And then I always say to that kid, okay, so I've written it out. Now it's your job to rewrite it in your own writing with that as your prompt on the page. And they go, yep, I got it, Miss Billie Jo. And then they go and they do it. And now they have the questions down in their own handwriting,
So are
right?
you scribing on a separate piece of paper? Because you
I
don't want
asked them,
to.
well, yes. So like you could do it on a separate piece of paper, but I had just asked them, I'm like, can I write in your nature journal on this page?
Okay.
And they go, yeah, that's totally fine. So
Okay.
yeah, in a perfect world, like if I was a teacher and you had a separate piece of paper, brilliant. I don't always have that when I'm going in
Exactly.
for workshops. And so I always just ask permission. Right.
Hmm.
And even if they're like really, really struggling with the picture, sometimes it's easier if I say, like, can I do it lightly in your book just to kind of show you? And then I can leave, but I'm not taking my whiteboard with me because I have to have it for another student. So sometimes it is easier if I'm going to do this really lightly. You can either keep it or you can erase it and then kind of go from there. And I know I said it, they don't have erasers, but sometimes there's an eraser that a friend has close by, or I do it
Hmm.
very, very lightly, right?
Hmm.
So the idea is to be able to give them the time and the space that they need to get caught up in whatever it is that they do. So
Yeah.
even when I'm doing metadata, we do that together as a group, and I have a big whiteboard at the front that I write it down, what that is, and I leave it there so that whoever needs a few more minutes to catch up on that isn't feeling rushed, if
Okay.
that makes
So
any
can
sense.
you tell us a bit more about the metadata piece?
Yeah,
And
so the metadata I think is really fun. And I think it really breaks the page. So I think when you give a
mhm.
student a piece of paper and it's just this white blank piece of paper staring back at them, it's like, I don't know where to start. I don't
Yep.
know where to go with that. And so metadata, I think, can be really fun. And I think it can be fun in a whole bunch of different ways. And so the idea, and the reason why I really like it is it gives you data. Like, so now we're adding numbers in without even really having to think about numbers.
Hmm.
And also for me, I think it grounds them into the where they are in that space and time, which I think is really important. So we start out with the date. And so I write the date down on my big board, and the kids, they do this every day in school. It doesn't matter if they're in kindergarten or they're in grade 7 or 8, whatever that is, you are starting every day off with what is today's date. And so then the kids will be like, do we need to write down Tuesday? And I'm like, if you want to write down Tuesday, you can write down Tuesday. For our purposes today, we just need the date. But
Hmm.
because I know in kindergarten, what was yesterday, what was today, like I know the process. I've spent enough time in classrooms to understand that what's going on, right? So yeah, you can add Tuesday if you want to, right? And so then we look at weather. And so if you're in kindergarten, I start off with like a weather icon. Like, what's the picture of the weather? And so they're like, tell me what the weather is. And the kids are like, the leaves are green. And then we have to have a discussion about that's not weather, right? So
Hmm.
what's weather? What are we feeling on our faces? What are we seeing in the sky? And that's learning.
Hmm.
That's learning. So here we are, we're teaching now about weather and what's happening. And then they go, oh, it's sunny. And then someone else say, it's cloudy. And then someone else say, it's windy. And you're like, all of those things are true at the same time. So let's draw a little picture of that. And then the kids will be like, I don't know how to draw a cloud. Because if they're in JK and they're like, this is the first time I'm holding a pencil. Great. Let's learn how to draw a cloud together, right?
Hmm.
It just needs to be a squiggly line. And then they're like, oh, I can do this. And then I'm always like, your son can have a smile face because why wouldn't it have a smile face? Right. And so there's all this like fun little
Hmm.
drawing tricks that are happening with an icon, that's on the page. And for if you're in kindergarten, like, let's be honest, that icon is the entire page. Great, perfect. I've given them a 60-page journal. They're good. They got lots
Yeah.
of time to do this, right?
Hmm.
So flip the page. If they're in older grades, I like to add in more data to it. So I get them to we use an app, the weather app, and we look at what the temperature actually is.
Mm.
Because I find that really fascinating for the kids who come out later in the afternoon to be able to say, hey, just FYI, the grade two class who was out here at 10 o'clock, this was the temperature. And now this is the temperature. And they go, whoa, right? Like, that's amazing. And then I like to add the time of day. And I talk about the fact that time and temperature have a really unique relationship. And I was like, you can collect this data and put it into a graph. And they're like, really? And I'm like, I'm sorry, are we doing data management now? Is that part of your curriculum? I think it is, right? Like you could do a line graph, you could do a bar graph. There's all these different graphs that you can do. You can do it in 15-minute increments. You can do it like whatever, right? Why are we giving arbitrary numbers to figure out weather when you can just go outside with a
Hmm.
thermometer? And like it's amazing to me, right? And so now we can put this all into a graph at the end of a week, at the end of a day, whatever it is. So now here we are, we're adding math into our nature journal as well, part of the curriculum. Then it's where we are in the world. So if we're, in kindergarten, usually, if I'm feeling pretty confident with the kindergarten skills, we will write out the name of the school. Sometimes we'll just put school, and that's okay too, right?
Hmm.
With the older kids, I'm like, where are we in the world? And they go, Canada. And I'm like, cool, Canada's massive, right? So I'm like, how do we make it smaller? Because I said, if a scientist asked you where you found this really cool thing and you said Canada, they'd be like, yeah, that's not good enough. We need to
Hmm.
know it's specific. So then some kid will be like, Ontario, and then they'll get closer, and I'm like, great, now we're in the province, now we're in the city. Where are we right now? And then the kids will be like, in the field at this school. And you're like, ding, that's it. And then I always say to the teachers, like, depending on the age of your kids, if you want to super nerd out, like, hello, UTM coordinates, longitude and latitude,
Mm, good
like,
one.
there's a million spaces that you can go with this. Oh my gosh, get out a map. Let's look at geography. Oh, could we build a map in our nature journal? Yes, we can. Right? So there's like all this amazing stuff that you can do. And we haven't even left metadata yet. We haven't even
Yeah.
left metadata. We haven't got into anything else, but look at all the parts of the curriculum that we just hit,
Hmm.
right? And so if you were
Hmm.
talking about geography, you could also then start to say, like, what treaty lands are we on? Are we ceded? Are we unceded? What does that look like? Who owns the treaty lands? Who used to live here before us?
Hmm.
Again, we haven't made it past metadata. And look at all of the curriculum connections that we've already made, right? So,
Hmm.
depending on how you want to take that information and go with it, there's a million different ways that you can go with that. And one nature journal page can give you so much options for like the rest of the week,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
you can be like, we're going to nature journal today and it's Monday. We're going to go outside. We're going to get the metadata from today and we're going to grab all of this stuff. And then Tuesday, tomorrow, our focus really this week is on temperature. So every day for 15 minutes, we're going to go outside and we're going to take the temperature. Because at the end of the week, we're also doing data management. So we're going to put that into a graph at the end of the week. Like, you're
Good
welcome.
one.
There's your
Yeah.
lesson, and you haven't had to do anything for it.
Yeah. Yeah. No
Right? Like, so
worksheets. You didn't
that's,
photocopy. Yep.
yeah. So that's how I
Simple.
kind of look at that. I don't even remember what your question was. Oh my gosh. Like, I just
Oh,
spiraled out
I just
into,
wanted to know what metadata was. I mean,
oh,
with
metadata.
the,
Right.
right?
There we
Yeah.
go.
I think that that lies within the bigger question of, what does, a nature journaling session really look like? And do you need a full
Yeah.
hour? Do you do it within
No,
10 minutes?
I think that's where nature drilling is completely flexible, right? It's
Mhm.
unbelievably flexible. And I also just want to really reiterate that it doesn't even have to be about writing it down. Because let's be honest, you are not taking a September class of SKs and JKs outside and expecting them to write in a nature journal.
Yeah.
Like, and I want to be really clear that I will never tell you that that is the expectation when I'm coming in to do any sort of class, professional development or working with your students, because that is insane. That is
Hmm.
insane, right? They don't even know how to hold a pencil at that point in time. This is brand new school. So I always say to like kindergarten, even grade ones, because really in September they're SKs, right? Like you
Hmm.
got to think it hasn't been a year since they were in school. It's been 2 months. So
Hmm.
they've grown a lot in 2 months, but like let's not get crazy, right? They're still sort of that age level. And so the idea is getting them to think about um like the sorry, I'm having a brain fart. Like the scaffolding, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So and getting them used to the fact that you are now a teacher that is going to take them outside.
Yeah.
And what does that mean to be outside? It is not recess, it is learning time, right? And so, can you give time for unstructured play within that? 100%. Whatever your goal is to go outside. But if your goal when you go outside is for learning time, then that's the goal. And it needs to be prefaced, and students need to kind of get their heads wrapped around that because unfortunately, that is a new concept for many kiddos, right? So we need to be realistic about that.
Yep.
So before they leave the class, here's the expectation, guys. I know we're going outside. Yes, it's super fun. I'm super excited as well, but it's learning time. It's not recess. If everybody, we do a really great job and, we have some extra time at the end, we can talk then about that. But we might be so into what we're doing that we just don't have time for that now. But recess is coming later, and that's when you're going to run outside,
Right.
right?
And I will totally insert my little thing that I've said before.
Yeah.
I always do a Venn diagram. Recess, outdoor learning.
Yes.
There's overlap for sure.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
recess is the playground. It is all these other types of games
The tag, it's the
for
swinging,
sure.
it's the sliding, it's all the things,
It's
right?
all the things. And it's not saying that we don't play games when we're outdoor
But they have a
learning
focus.
exploration
They
time,
have a focus for our goal.
but it's a focus, right? It's
Yeah, they have a
around what
focus
our
for our
learning
goal.
intention is. Yeah.
100%.
Love
So those
that.
game activities that we're going to play are because of the goal that we have for our learning objectives outside,
Yeah.
right? And so that's a difference. But, playing,
Toilet tag.
I was gonna say toilet tag or fainting goat tag. I go, that's just because it's fun, right? There's no overall like major learning goal in that except you get to be a toilet and it's really fun. But if I'm playing, quick frozen critters or I'm, playing
Hmm.
macroinvertebrate mayhem, that's because that activity has a goal that runs along with what we're doing in the class today and
Yeah.
what we're learning about. So there's a difference between those things. And I think that's really important to make that distinguish between those two things.
Hmm.
And so, oh my gosh, train of thought.
So I love it. So yeah, September, we're getting used to
Oh,
outdoor
September. Yes.
learning,
Okay.
right?
So kindergarten and even some of your older grades, although I think older grades tend to handle it better where you could jump right in, but those little grades where we're just kind of learning how to write, my whole thing is like we're gonna go on a 15-minute walk. And this is what we need to be doing in that 15 walk. I'm
Hmm.
also going to preface it that I am not like a big person in making them stand in lines. That's
Mm.
just who I am.
Yeah.
If that's what you need to do to just keep the chaos down, totally fine. I'm a little bit more fluid with it, and that's just my style, and that's okay. But I don't want it to be so when I say like I just let them go, like I just kind of we have to be in a group, but I don't
Hmm.
necessarily have to be in a line because then I run into like so and so's budding. And for me, that is like an emotional killer for the entire group. So those are kind of the things
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
talk about. Whereas, like, if you want to walk beside your friend, you can walk beside your friend. And that's kind of how I've always done any of my outdoor sort of education sort of pieces. It's like we can move through the line, it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but what I want them to do is I want them to start to learn how to look,
Hmm.
right? So I'm going to start to introduce the I notice. And for kinders, you might have to change that to I see because notice is kind of a big word where they're like, I don't really know what that
Yeah.
means. So I'm
Yep.
going to say I notice. And then what that means is, what do I see? What am I seeing? And so I want you to come to this area and I just want you to tell me what you're starting to notice. That's it. What are you seeing? Tell me the colors. Let's all look and see what colors we can find. And then, so now we're learning colors. Oh, that's part of the curriculum. And then I'm like, let's learn about textures. What does textures mean? And how would we describe these textures? And oh, let's do some counting. This is fun, right? How many petals do those flowers see? Or how many little trees do you see? Right? Let's start to learn. And so we haven't done anything. I'm not even introducing, I'm not even talking about questions. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. We are learning how to be outside and how to look. That's what
Hmm.
we're learning. And
Hmm.
maybe that's your first couple of weeks. Cool. That's nature journaling, right? Because you're still kind of out there and you're making connections. So then you start to kind of like flow through it a little bit more. And now maybe you're looking at adding in some I wonders. Hey guys, what do you think's going on here? Right. So we've got these I notices down pat. The kids are coming out. They're like, Miss Reed, this is what I'm noticing. This is the colors. Like it's all starting to just be something that they know is going to be happening. So
Hmm.
let's add in the next little piece to that. What kind of questions do you have? And then they kind of are going to look at you like, I don't really know how to ask a question when someone asks me to ask a question. So
Hmm.
what does it mean to ask a really great question? Well, now we're learning how to structure questions and we're starting to learn about our 5 W's and we're starting to look out, the how that gets thrown into that as well. So we're starting to do all this. This is all curriculum based, right? This is everything that you need them to do, but we're doing it orally, right?
Hmm.
Which is also part of the curriculum. You are assessing them orally as well as written, right? Like it
Yep.
doesn't matter what province you're in or what state you're in, that's all part of curriculum. So then we start to make connections. And that I'm going to tell you is going to happen immediately because the kid's going to be like, this looks like a furry dog. This looks like a caterpillar. And you're like, yeah, well, now we're making connections. But now I'm going to have the intentional conversation about what does it mean to make connections. And so I say to teachers all the time, like, it might be December, maybe January, if you're in those little primary grades before
Hmm.
you get pencil.
Yep.
But outside.
Hmm.
But what can you be doing to prep that in between that? You are in kindergarten and you have stations set up. You do in the morning. You have different tables with different activities. And probably one of those tables is a table full of whiteboards where you're getting them to practice their name. I know this.
Hmm.
I've spent enough time in kindergarten classes. So you have a table that's set up with that, right? But now the kids all know how to write their names. So now start getting them to write down the date. Start getting them to write down the name of the school.
Hmm.
And now all of a sudden, oh, what are we prepping for? Metadata. That's what we're prepping for.
Hmm.
You're going to get them to start to practice writing the weather. So instead of just doing the weather orally out loud together as a group, have that as one of your stations where they're practicing writing icons of what that weather looks like. So they're practicing writing clouds, they're practicing writing suns, they're practicing writing wind lines or raindrops or whatever it is. It's on a whiteboard, it's in the station anyway. So it's still things that you need them to be doing. No one's asking you to reinvent the wheel for this. It's just a different way of thinking about it. You got to do some art projects? Great. Let's start getting them to learn how to trace things. That's part of your stations. That's an art project that you're doing because that's going to prep you for getting them outside to be nature journaling later.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to try something different? We're looking at textures. Great. Let's bring in a whole bunch of things and get them to learn how to do rubbings properly. Because if you do the rubbing with the end of your pencil, it doesn't work. You got to use the side of your pencil, right? Or the side of your crayon to get in order to get that spread. So now you're
Hmm.
teaching them an art project, but really you're prepping them for outdoor learning for that nature journal in those stations,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It all comes up. And then as you go along, that you're starting to get them to write out letters and numbers you have the letter of the week. Okay, great. So the letter of the week this year or this today is P. Okay, great. So part of our outdoor learning today is going to be going outside and looking for things that start with the letter P. And now we're looking at purple flowers. We're looking at I don't even know whatever else you can find, right? There's signs or there's people outside, like whatever starts with the letter P. I'm integrating that now into my letter of the week. Our number of the week is 3. So now part of our outdoor learning is we're going outside and we're looking for things that are in threes,
Looking for
right?
that
So this
poison
is a
ivy.
yeah, yeah, exactly, right? So my whole thing is like, how can we do what we're doing in class
Hmm.
already? Because I don't want to stress any teacher out by asking them, like, I'm all of a sudden going to ask you to go outside and that's reinventing. You're not
Hmm.
reinventing anything. It's all things you're already doing.
Yes.
But I'm just going to ask you to slightly think about it a little bit differently.
Hmm.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. I'm going to ask you to think your tables a little bit differently. That's it. All in the way to prep for later.
Yep.
Yes, by the end of the school year, your JKs might not be writing in full sentences or even full words by then. Who cares?
Doesn't matter.
Can they go outside and on that piece of paper, can they write the date? Can they put in their icon for the weather and where they are in the world? Can they do their metadata? They should, because every day in
Hmm.
your block of tables, you've been asking them to do that for months.
Hmm.
You're going to say, we're going to do a leaf study. Keep it simple. Do a leaf study. They can trace it. Hey, my kids have been practicing tracing now for months, or they've got rubbings down. So you're going to take some crayons outside and do that. And now you're going to ask them to start adding in some of those words that you've already been working on in class. You've
Yep.
already been doing stuff that says, this is how we spell red. This is how we spell green. And you keep it simple. Guys, what color is this? And they go, it's green. Great. Let's together figure out how to spell this. What does it start with? G, 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 r, 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 e, right? And we go through the whole thing. And now those kids have written green. Like
Yeah.
it's amazing,
It
right?
is.
And if they can't figure that part out, do they know what the starting sound is?
Yep.
Because if some of your kids are on a different learning plan and they're not writing fully yet, can they say to you, I know it starts with a G because it makes a G sound? Awesome, sweetheart. Let's practice writing your G. And they can write a G, and that aligns perfectly with their learning goals and assessments. You just won.
Hmm.
That's a lottery that you and that kid just won together outside looking at a leaf,
Yeah. Well, and
right?
some another resource that I put into there, we've got little pencil type cases, little flexible
Yeah,
ones, and that's our nature journaling kit, right? So
yeah,
we've got their Sharpie, a fine
yeah,
liner Sharpie, we've got all the watercolor paint pens,
yeah.
and
Perfect.
in there we also have little mini word banks, and I switch them
Yes,
up depending
yes,
on the season, depending on our
yes,
goal. So the beginning of the year, as you had said, we're going to focus on textures. So I have a word bank of different texture words
right?
paired up often with visuals,
Yes,
depending again
yes.
on the age of your kid. So there's so many supports that we can
And
include.
depending on your kiddo's learning goals, they might also need that texture to have a feeling.
Yeah.
So take your word bank, and if it's scratchy or whatever, have a piece of sandpaper beside it so that
Hmm.
they can feel it and be like, right, scratchy means or rough means this, soft
Yeah.
means this. There's different ways that you as an educator have the tools to be able to guide those in 100%.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I love and appreciate, and I think this is why there's so much overlap between you and
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
because we very much believe in indoor outdoor cohesion, right?
Absolutely.
What I
Absolutely.
do inside goes into our outdoor program.
Absolutely.
I'm not outside all day with my grade two threes, but
No.
what I start indoors gets taken outside and it gets
It's
deeper,
transferred.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because
Yeah.
like I don't want to live in a world where like I believe everything should be taught outside. There's just some stuff that it's just not going to work
Hmm.
outside. And there's some stuff that you need to start the base or build that foundation inside where they can be like, I've got nothing else. There's no squirrel moments where I
Yeah.
could just be like, how do I just add these two numbers together so
Yeah.
that when we go outside, they go, now there's more distractions, but I've got my base foundation.
Yeah.
And now I've seen three black squirrels and I've seen four gray squirrels. So how many squirrels do I have altogether? Okay, so I have
Hmm.
to take my three plus my four. We did this inside. I've got my fingers as well. I can make this magic happen, right? And so, yes, I'm a firm believer. If you're teaching sentence structures and how that works, yeah, it's going to be better in the classroom. But the idea is that you then take the base foundation, you take it outside,
Right.
and now you give them the chance to create their own sentence based on their own observations and experiences because now they have autonomy over that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so important to have that cohesion between those two things because, we've talked about this before that they have to know how to do basic things to be
Yes.
able to like get a job and go to university or go to college or get into the trades or whatever that is. There is foundational um, learning that needs to happen. What
Mm-hmm.
we're saying is we can deepen that
Yeah.
outdoors.
Yeah.
We can give more meaning to that outdoors. And I'm going to preface this with myself. I hated math, like hated math. I'm going to be honest. I don't even know at the ripe old age of 47. I do not know my times tables. That is just what it is. That's where I'm at in life because I shut down in
Mm.
math. But imagine now at 47, I look for numbers. I
Yeah.
look for numbers in the environment and I look at ways that I can collect data, measure something, and think about numbers in a different way because it's more fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
More fun,
Yeah.
right? And I'm looking at it in a different way. So imagine we give these kids who all grown, they groan every single time. I'm like, guys, we're gonna do a little math. And they're like, ah, right? There's a
Mm-hmm.
collective groan because we haven't made it fun.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
how do
for
we
sure.
make it fun? Right? How do we do things that we can put a different spin on it and all of a sudden it make numbers exciting? And also remember that math isn't just numbers.
No.
It's patterns, it's
Yeah.
shapes, it's data. Like it's all of these different things that make it math. And
Mm-hmm.
so you might not be like, I don't really like my timetables, but I love a graph,
Yeah.
right? So how can we switch it up and then get them to do that, right? And then, it's kind of like word problems. I always say like you can give them a word problem where like Sally came to a party and she brought a dozen cookies with her. And then Jimmy came along and Jimmy ate seven of them. And now, how many does Sally have with her sad face?
Mm-hmm.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares who ate the cookies? Nobody cares. There's no emotional attachment to those
Mm-hmm.
cookies. Even if you use the names of the children in your class, they're like, I wasn't at a party.
Yeah.
Nobody ate my cookies. There's no emotion attached to that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, can we go outside and can we observe and say, hey, we have like three peonies bushes in our garden and how many of them have bloomed and then how many of the blooms have went to seed, like whatever that is. And now we're going to pull math from like real life situations or like, hey, we're working on volume. Okay, so we filled up the bird feeder and
Mm-hmm.
how much bird seed did it take to fill the volume of the bird feeder up? 5 days later, the birds have been eating. What's the volume now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's give tangible things that the kids can connect to.
Yeah.
And then here, I'm getting crazy. I'm getting crazy. Could you maybe build in budget talks into that? It costs
Mm.
$50 to buy 3 pounds of bird seed. So if they're going and eating bird seed at this rate, how much are we? Oh my gosh, we're teaching them how to budget things. Like, come on,
Yeah.
right? Like that's how I look at it is like everything can be done through an outdoor lens that allows you to be more intentional and to
Mm-hmm.
make kids care more. And
Yeah.
so they've now spent time nature journaling in front of this bird feeder. They know the names of the birds that are coming here. And now we're like bringing in volume into this. And now we're going to bring in like budget talks. And then you give them like, okay, so now we're going to play with like each of you gets a $300 budget for this year. How are you going to spend it to
Mm-hmm.
feed the birds? Like,
Ooh,
what are you
good
going to
one.
like, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
all these amazing things that you can do to extend that outdoor learning, but keep it connected to what they're fascinated by and what they're interested in. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where I like to kind of live with outdoor education, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
like, to me, outdoor education is this incredible place that just allows kids a freedom of autonomy and a freedom of movement and a freedom of creativity. And it's my job as the educator and a facilitator to facilitate the goals of learning, but without stamping down all of those other things.
Well, and here's then my question related to that, because I'm often
Yeah.
trying to figure out that balance between providing a prompt with
Hmm.
our nature journal,
Yeah.
but balancing that creativity piece so that they have autonomy. So, can you
Yeah.
give maybe a couple of examples of some prompts that you love to use and the different ways that kids can be creative and add their own flair and
Yeah, and
insight
that's
into it?
I think my big thing is with that the flair. So my prompts I tend to stick because I'm not a classroom teacher. So I just want to
Hmm.
like preface that as well, right? I go into classrooms when I worked for the school board. I went into classrooms and I did a lot of things. I've also been a supply like so I spent a lot of time in the classrooms in sort of those capacities, but
Hmm.
not as a formal teacher. And so when I'm thinking about my prompts with nature journaling, they tend to stay sort of in the I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of sort of prompt based because they're kind of learning how to nature journal.
Hmm.
But so say I did one in June. I went into a school and I worked with a grade 5, 6 class and it was biodiversity. So that was our prompt was biodiversity. So we were nature journaling with the intention of looking at biodiversity in a space. And so there are different ways that they can be creative with that. And I said to them, like, you can draw, I gave them a hoop, like a, not a hula hoop, because I find hula hoops are too big. So I gave them rope circles that were sort of like maybe like the size of like a pie plate or something. And so in that, you can do a couple of different things, right? And I like to give them ideas because it's the first time they're doing it and they're just not really sure. I was
Hmm.
like, you can draw the circle and then draw what you see that's inside the circle. Or you could just use the circle as a focus point and then pull out 2 to 3 things to draw on the other side
Hmm.
and figure it out. So that's giving them autonomy in how they want to collect the information on their page.
Hmm.
And then I say to them, I'm going to say yes for everything except for like 2 questions. And the 2 questions are, Billie Jo, can I eat this? No, you can't eat it. Billie Jo, can I lick it? No, you may not lick it, right? For the most part, and I'm sure there's other things that people are listening and being like, well, I wouldn't say yes to this either. Sure, but these are the questions that I most likely will get. So I stick with those as no's. But if it's in your head of, can I do bubble letters? Know that my answer is yes.
Hmm.
Can I write sideways, like up the page? The answer is yes.
Hmm.
Can I add like a frame or a circle around this? The answer is, and then they all start to go, yes. And my whole thing is like, I give them ideas by modeling it within my own nature journals as well. This is
Right.
where I've used bubble letters. This is where I've used frames. This is where I've like let it bust out of the frame. This is where I've done this. And then that gives them permission to
Hmm.
be creative. And then what I find is that if I find somebody, because I'm moving around to everybody in the group, if I see somebody who's doing something pretty cool that I think other people in the group want to steal that idea. And when I say steal that idea, I mean in the best possible, like, admiration of sharing, like, your idea is so cool. I just can't wait to, because honestly, that's what we're all doing is we go, hey, Lauren had a really great idea. So I'm gonna like props to Lauren. I'm gonna say, hey, I know this girl named Lauren and she's doing this. We're gonna try it over here. That's what we do. That's
Hmm.
community, right? That's
Hmm.
how we lift each other up. And so this one, I have a couple of quick little funny stories, but a little boy in grade 2, I think he was in grade 2, and he was like, I'm looking at all these colors and I'm just wondering, can I do a pie chart? I'm like, if you're in grade 2, friend, and you know how to do a pie chart, have at it. Do your pie chart. And then other kids are like, what's a pie chart? I'm like, oh, let's do a pie chart lesson. So now here it is. And now in grade 2, we're doing pie charts because
Hmm.
everybody wants a pie chart in theirs because it looks really cool. So there you are. You have all these impromptu lessons that are happening. Is a pie chart in grade 2 necessarily part of the curriculum? No, but is it pretty awesome if they're interested in it? And is that like a great learning moment because they're gonna learn about it in grade 3 anyways? Yes. I'm saying to the one group of kids, hey, we're gonna each pick two things today, and we're gonna do a comparison. And an idea of how you can do it is to do like a T chart. And in my world, I wasn't thinking about anything else. I was like, just try a T chart. And this little girl like lifts her hand up, and she's like, I'm Miss Billie Jo, and I go, yeah, and she goes, instead of a T chart, can I just do a Venn diagram? I'm like, yes. Like, you want to rocket a Venn diagram? Next thing you know, everybody's doing Venn diagrams. Another little girl was like writing her notes, and in her book, she drew a notebook that had like a spiraled
Oh, cute.
ring thing to it because it
Hmm.
made it look cool. And I was like, that's an awesome idea. I go, I think other people would like that. Do you mind
Hmm.
if I share? And she's like, okay. And I'm like, check it out. Look what so and so is doing. What a cool idea. And then I'm like, you can steal that. And then everybody laughs. Next thing you know, looking around, everybody's doing the same thing because they're cool ideas. So it's this
Hmm.
great way of like highlighting some kiddos and highlighting some kiddos who might not normally get highlighted for
Hmm.
positive things, highlighting them to their peers as this like brilliant way of doing things. And now you have your peers sharing in on the awesomeness that you created. Like, that's pretty amazing. And
Hmm.
then I bring out like colored pencils and I'm like, let's add some color to this to zhuzh it up. And the kids are like, wow, this totally changes everything. And I'm like, right? Like, all of a sudden your picture's looking pretty cool now, isn't it? Right?
Hmm.
And so it's this amazing thing where I think, like, in terms of that creativity, it's just giving them ideas and then letting them go for it and then celebrating when you see kids doing cool things. I'm like, check it out. This person's using bubble letters. And then other people are like, oh, I can do a bubble letter. Or I'm like,
Hmm.
hey, this person decided to draw in a ruler to give scale to their item.
Hmm.
Oh my
Love
gosh, I
that.
want to do that. Or a kindergarten, like they traced their finger and to give scale. Everybody was like, I can do that, right? There's like a million different things that you can do. So I think creativity doesn't necessarily have to be something that you like mandate out, but I think you can do it through like modeling, and it doesn't always necessarily have to be me that's modeling it.
Hmm.
I can just be the person, the facilitator who is celebrating
Yeah.
what they're already doing, but with like throwing in a few like quick little ideas to get people started. And the big thing is permission. I give them permission.
Yeah.
You
And
don't
you're
have
giving
to
them
ask
time and space for it. Like you're
time and
not
space and
rushing
permission.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
time, space, and permission.
Yeah.
And then again, I only have like sometimes like an hour with them. And so I do sometimes have to push them a little bit. And I'll say, hey, listen, I know you're not done your eye notices yet. Don't
Hmm.
panic
Hmm.
because the nature journal is yours. So when I do program, they get a nature journal.
Yeah.
I said the nature journal is yours. So we're not going to panic about it because you can always slip it into your book because this is the first time. So I've asked them to collect something, right? So I said, but we only have an hour together, and I really want us to get to the question part. And I was like, if you get done that, then you can kind of come back. And then the teacher's always like, I'll get time later. And I'm like,
Hmm.
great. That's all they need is more time a little bit later to be able to sort of like move their way through there. So sometimes I do have to move them a little bit, but at
Hmm.
the same time, I'm not hard on it. So if I look and the kid is still working on their eye notices, I just give like slight prompts like, don't forget, do a self check. Did you get your questions down? Did you get your questions down? And
Hmm.
yes, I give guidelines for questions. And I give guidelines in terms of how many I want to see, because that's
Hmm.
always the question. How many do I have to write? And there's the groan and the moan, right? And
Yeah.
so this is how I do it. This is how I do it. I say, depending on whatever grade you're in, that's the number of questions that I'm expecting. So if you're in grade
Ooh.
one, I'm expecting one question from you. If you're in kindergarten, I'm asking for one question as well. But usually that is supplemented with me helping them write that. If
Hmm.
I'm the kindergarten teacher, right, then I'm going to have a nature journal where I write a class version of the questions,
Yeah.
right? Because I might, as a by myself in a whole class like that, I might not have time to get around to every single person. It might just not be
Hmm.
feasible. Fine. So do it a different way. You
Yeah.
can also be like, Here's a recording device. Would you please talk into here and tell me your questions? I'm going to take time later when you're doing other things and whatever, and I'm going to write those on our collective board, and then maybe we're going to use those for inquiry. What? Is that also part of kindergarten? Yeah, it is, right? And so now we're doing inquiry based on their own questions, right? Like
Hmm.
they've given you the idea. And so I think that is kind of those kind of important pieces. Oh, I lost my train of thought again. My God. Um, uh, what were we talking about? Oh
Yeah,
my
we were
God.
talking about sort of the framework. So the questions, how much time we give
Yes. How much
kids.
time? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so just thinking about that, and so I kind of have to move them through that a little bit. The other thing
Hmm.
I do for questions is I model how many questions I can ask in about 15 seconds. And so I'm like, I know you're all groaning, but watch what I can do. And I'll take like the pencil and I'll like, I won't pick a pencil, but I'll pick like a leaf and I'll be like, okay, so how big are you? How old are you? How long will you take to decompose? What is your function within the environment? Does anybody eat you? If they eat you, who eats you? Is it a caterpillar? What kind of caterpillar eats you? How did you get here? Did you fly? Did you break off? Did someone bring you from here? And the kids are like, oh, what just happened? I go, so don't complain to me when I'm asking you to do three questions. And then they're like, bah, okay, fine. She's proven her point, right? And then I get them putting their hands up and they're like, can I do like more than three questions? Yes, you can do more than three questions. And because they're doing that and they're asking all these different kinds of questions, I also then get the chance to come around and like have individual conversations with them about their questions and stuff.
Hmm.
So I had this really great conversation with a student. I can say the student was in grade 5 and he was looking at an object. It was raining that day. So I always bring stuff in with me. So if we have to be flexible and move inside, then we can move inside because it's pouring rain and you're not nature journaling when it's pouring rain because now you have wet paper.
Hmm.
And so I bring a bunch of stuff in and they get to choose. And so he's looking at something and he says, this is a rock. And I go, huh. I go, that's a bold statement. I go, just out of curiosity, is there a possibility that you are incorrect?
Hmm.
And he was like, maybe. And I go, okay. I go, so let's just like, let's talk this through. And I said, because it's okay to be incorrect. And I said, when we make a bold statement that this is this, I go, we're saying that with 100% certainty. And I said, we don't always have 100% certainty. So I said, let's just spitball some ideas here and see if we kind of come back to the fact that it is, in fact, a rock. And
Hmm.
he goes, okay. I said, so what's the evidence that you have that tells you it's a rock? And he said, well, it's hard, the color, and it's got these sort of like holes or bubbles kind of in it. And I go, okay. I go, great. I go, let's, think about it in a different way. I go, what else in nature has those same characteristics?
Love that.
And so he was like, oh, okay. And so I was like, do all rocks only found on land? And he was like, well, no, you can get rocks in lakes and oceans. And I go, okay. I go, so let's keep with that mind frame, right? And then he's like, oh, could this be like coral? And I'm like, oh, interesting. I go, what maybe makes you think that? And he's like, actually, well, like the longer I'm looking at this, the more I'm thinking it has a really interesting shape that maybe is a little bit more like coral. I go,
Mm.
oh, okay, interesting. So I said, so have we leaned maybe in a different direction than our first bold statement based on what we know kind of already about the world and some of the evidence that we're pulling out? And he was like, yeah. And he goes, I'm really, actually, Billy Joe, he's like, I'm really thinking that this isn't a rock. He's like, I'm really thinking this is actually a piece of coral. And so normally I don't really tell them what the answer is, but I said to him in this situation, you're right, it is coral. And he was like,
Mm.
and I said, so that's my point. I said, so do you understand? I said, when we make bold statements,
Hmm.
I said, we're not leaving ourselves any place to grow and that
Mm.
we could potentially be incorrect. And so I said, if we want to sit in sort of a growth mindset of where we could gather more information, I said, because, where you are in your learning for rocks or whatever that is. I said, there's always this potential. And he was like, yeah, I totally get that. And so now I'm having this very profound lesson with this student about evidence-based evidence-based information coming in and how we can think something immediately,
Mm-hmm.
but once we're given time to sort of sit with that and maybe have a different look at it, our provisional acceptance of that kind of moves along a scale, right? And so, Jack has always said that too, right? He's like, he has a smiley face that moves on like a provisional scale, right? Of like, maybe I'm a little bit more over here today, and maybe I'm a little bit over here today. So I said, I always say to kids when they're like, nope, that's it. And I go, oh, that's a very bold statement. I go, is there a potential that we can be wrong? And then some kids will be like, no. And I know they're wrong. And I'm like, well, let's just think about it, right? Like let's kind of pull out some evidence. And then they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and it's not about proving to the kid that they're wrong. That's not what the lesson is. The lesson is understanding that I might not always be right, and that's okay. But how I get to an answer is based on what I'm seeing and some other evidence. And so it's not about humbling that kid. It's not about proving that they're wrong, because sometimes I don't even tell them if they're right or wrong. That's not what the lesson is. The lesson is, how do we get our kiddos to be in a growth mindset where they're willing to accept more information and to potentially change their minds along that scale,
Mm-hmm.
right? That can be used for more than just science. If they are voting when they're 18 and they go, I am
Yeah.
this, I only vote for this party. And you
Mm-hmm.
go, okay. Are you so close-minded that you're not willing to listen to the other parties to have them potentially go like, oh, maybe this isn't how I thought that was.
Mm-hmm.
So do I need to rethink my thinking? These are bigger lessons than just, is it a rock or is it a piece of coral?
Yeah.
They're bigger lessons. And that is the power of giving them time, space, opportunity outside to be able to have those connections to something that's not, you're not going to get that same conversation if you're playing with manipulatives in class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the question is, it's a plastic cube.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's a plastic cube. I got nothing else for that.
Yeah.
Right? You're right. That's what it is. There's no other conversation for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what I hope in those situations, that conversation I had with that kiddo, although it was in April, it was a one-on-one conversation where I was able to sit with him for probably like 10 minutes or so, because other kids are nature journaling, right? They're
Yeah.
doing their thing. Was that enough to stick with him, to make him just question things a little bit different?
Right.
That's what you hope,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you hope, because it's more than just the nature journal.
Yeah.
These are spaces and places to have these big lessons, big conversations about lots of things that they're going to need later in life. And what we're doing is, by taking them outdoors and giving them that introduction to things outside and the time and the space to connect with things, is that we hope that those skills are transferable. And here's the funny thing, the stats show it, right?
Yep.
Right? Like, it's not like it's just Lauren and Billie Jo who are talking about this. There's the scientists are talking about, they're telling you that this is what's happening. And so when I hear things like, well, I don't know if the kid really needs to go on the field trip, because I mean, it's just a field trip. They're just playing
Mm-hmm.
outside. That
Mm-hmm.
literally cuts my heart in so many different ways,
Yeah.
because the lessons that they will learn on that field trip in that moment might not be profound, but in 4 years, 5 years, and they think back and they go, oh, I get why that happened now.
Yeah.
Or that little conversation or that little moment that I had with that instructor or my friend kind of made me change the way I think about things. And it gave me more opportunity to try something else, or it gave me more confidence in myself to try something else. Like, there's
Mm-hmm.
a million different things that are happening outdoors because you have to push them a little bit out of their comfort zone
Yeah.
to get out there.
Yeah.
And it's not always super risky play, which I also love. And I think there's amazing things with risky play.
Hmm.
But what I'm asking you to do is going to be maybe really risky because I'm going to ask you to draw today. And
Yeah.
that's going to be really out of your comfort zone.
And to slow
Or,
down. That's hard for
yeah,
some kids.
really hard.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard, right? I might also ask you today to put an emoji on the top of your page when you first go outside to do a self check on your emotions. And
Hmm.
you might not normally be a person who is asked about your emotions, let alone asked to put them onto a paper.
Hmm.
And then I'm going to ask you at the end of that session to revisit that emoji and see if it's changed.
Yeah.
What does that mean for you? What
Hmm.
did that show you today about being outside and spending time in space, right? So there's,
Billie
yeah,
Jo, I mean, I just have to tell you a funny story about that. I do
yeah,
that with my class, but we do it through birds.
yeah.
So of course, right? So we have this little graph of all these different birds and how we
Yeah.
connect to their emotions and their energies. And so, okay,
Mhm.
what bird are we feeling like today? Are we a hummingbird? Are we an owl?
Oh, I
Right?
like
And so we draw a little icon and then at the end, like, did anybody migrate?
yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. And so see, there's a really good possibility I'm going to steal that.
It's so fun,
And instead of emojis, I'm going to be like, this is what an owl face looks like. This is what a hummingbird. That's
right? Yeah.
fantastic.
Are you feeling like a penguin? Like you're not
Yes.
going to fly today, but you're going to belly slide straight in and you're going to be
Yeah.
part of the rookery, right?
Oh my gosh, I love
Yeah.
that.
Or are you going
What
to
a
be a little
fabulous
critical
idea.
little robin? You're going to like hop around and be like, is that for me? I'm going to
Yeah.
hop over there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that so much.
It's so fun.
What beautiful ways though, right? To like have kids connect with their emotions, but in a super fun way without it sort of being like, I'm in the red zone today, and so I'm mad, right? And
Yeah.
I get it. I get
Me
it.
too. Yeah.
But like, is there a different spin on that to maybe not make it quite so
Mm.
grumpy? I don't
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
And I don't mean to poo-poo on any of that stuff. I just mean like I love the bird idea because it gives them like a different thought process and a different way to sort of connect with it that isn't so like steam coming out of their face kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
just a different way of
Yeah.
think, a different framing of that.
Well,
I
even
think it's
how
super fun.
because we have both, where we are in the mountain, we have both crows and ravens. And the
Oh
way that when they're flying overhead, I shout very appropriately, tail feathers. And so I want the kids to look up and look at the shape of the tail feathers.
yeah,
And
for
so the
sure.
crow, right, a bit more swoopy, like a
Yeah.
smiley face or a rainbow, because we
Ah,
are social, right? Crows
yeah.
love everybody. And
Yeah.
then we look at the tail feather of that raven that's a bit more wedge shape
Mhm.
or like an arrow. And we think ravens are very like more antisocial, right? They like to
Mhm.
be by themselves. And so it's like an
Yeah.
arrow being like, go away from me, like stay away.
Ah,
Isn't that awesome?
that's
And then
awesome.
again, like
So good.
it's not in um their communication on
Yeah.
how they're feeling, but we're making that nonverbal
Yeah.
relationship or connection piece,
Yeah.
as you're saying, right? So I'm
Yeah.
connecting the shape of the tail feathers to how they are socially.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a
I like
stretch.
it. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that's like, I mean, anything's really a stretch, but if it connects with them in a positive way
Yeah.
and it makes them feel good, like, and like, let's be honest. So now they're learning how to distinguish between ravens and crows that are flying.
Mm,
Like, that's a lesson in itself. And
right?
are we doing some extra noticing? Because you really got to notice the tail feather. Like, to me, there's a million different curriculum hits into that, not just the social emotional piece, right?
Totally.
Which,
Yep.
right? And so now we've made just looking at bird tails be a huge conversation,
Yeah.
right? And like, isn't that, I don't know, like, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing out there? Like, I don't
It's
know.
so
Like, that's
fun,
just,
right?
yeah,
We're
it's
so
fun.
lucky to be able to do
Yes.
this. That's what I
Yeah.
think. And we were
Yeah.
saying
Oh,
this
very,
before we
very, very
recorded.
lucky.
Yeah, we're
Very, very
just
lucky.
so honored. But
Absolutely.
I mean, honestly, Billy Joe, there might be a part two here because this was epic, but I feel like we could just keep going on and on.
We
I
probably could.
I appreciate this conversation so much because it gave us the starting point, but it also gave us
Mhm.
some really great practical ways to go a bit deeper
Yeah.
from young kids, but with the older kids as well.
Yeah.
So there's so
Sure.
much to take away from this
Yeah.
conversation.
Thank you so much. We
Yeah,
had fun.
thank you.
And
Yeah.
I talk a lot, so you give me a platform and it's all hell breaks loose.
Well, and actually, we should talk about how people can get in touch with you because you
Oh,
do a lot of work with school districts. And
yeah.
I highly recommend people look up your website, try to find if there are dates where you are available
Yeah.
to provide workshops. So, can you
Yeah, so
tell us a bit about
I'm
that?
actually taking dates right now for like next year, next school year. And so you can find me my website is Pine Ponder Outdoors at no .ca. This is me
Okay.
getting my Instagram and everything mixed up. So Pine Ponder Outdoors.ca is my website.
Okay.
But you can also find me on Instagram at Pine Ponder. And then you can also find me on Instagram at Billie Jo Outdoors as well. So there's my personal kind of here's me outdoors and then the business side of it as well. But yeah, or you can just email me as well. So I can, yeah, it's just pineponder at gmail.com. So that's pretty
Perfect.
easy. Pineponder at gmail.com. So
All
yeah,
right.
any
And
of those things.
I'll put all of that in the podcast notes so
Yeah,
it's easy
yeah,
for people
exactly.
to
So it'll be in the
click.
notes and stuff. But yeah, like feel free to reach out. Last year I got to go in and do lots of introduction to nature journaling workshops with the whole school. And so each
Mhm.
class kind of comes outside and we do that. And then I've sort of started tailoring some of the lessons to some more specific pieces of the curriculum. So if you've got grade
Nice.
sixes or whatever that are doing biodiversity, so everything will have a nature journaling base to it because
Hmm.
I just think it's too important not to have that piece into it. But like I do shapes, right? So we can do like a whole nature journaling session just looking at and focusing on shapes,
Hmm.
things like that for like, K to grade two, that sort of thing. But yeah, or whatever you want. Very
Yeah.
flexible and all those kinds of things. I'm open to having conversations and just doing that. And then I do some PD too. So if you've got some teachers who are looking to incorporate it in and looking for a space to start. How do we do this? And I think
Hmm.
that's the other thing with nature journaling, is it's incredibly equitable because really you need a piece of paper, a pencil,
Hmm.
and a clipboard.
Yeah.
That's what you need to get started. Like you
Yeah.
don't need anything. You don't need to go and spend thousands of dollars on fancy things. Nothing. It's nothing. And so if
Hmm.
you want to, if you're like, well, I don't have a nature journal, so make one. Take a bunch of paper, fold it in half, staple it, or you can get and make it into an art project. And now you guys are like grabbing sticks from outside and you're making the binding. And now you're going to learn how to sew and you're going to sew those pages into it. Like there's a million different ways to do it that you
Hmm.
can go broader and go deeper into it, or it's just a piece of paper and a pencil and you're going to stick it into a duotang
Yeah.
and that's going to be the nature journal. Like
Yeah.
there's a million different ways to do it.
Yeah.
So it's very equitable. It's very financially feasible in school districts to be able to do that, which is what I love. So
I love
yeah.
that. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very
Again,
much.
my big call to action to anybody listening would be to share this episode with a teacher. Share it with a
Yeah.
friend or like share it with five friends because I
Yeah.
think really as many, 10,
Yeah.
right? Gold
Yeah.
stars. Um, I love nature journaling so much, and I think
Mm,
it's something that I'd love to help other people build up.
yes.
And so I would, yeah, that would be my big ask for people listening is to share this with a friend and then reach out to Billy Joe. Be like,
Yeah.
okay, sorry, repeat for me. What is
Yeah.
my first step, Billy Joe? Right? Like
Yeah.
really help
And
us
just
get
email
started.
me. Like, I'm happy just to chat with people too and just get
Yeah.
people started. My goal, honestly, it's a big goal, but I would love to see nature journaling as part of the curriculum, like
Whoop,
across
whoop.
Canada and everywhere else. I would love to see this as a tool. And so, nature journaling is not something that you do once, it's not a
No.
one-off activity. This is a tool that you are going to use for your students' learning and for you to be able to have proof of everything that you're doing outdoors, and
Yeah.
you can use it for assessment. There's a million different things that you can do with this, and it gives you the gift of all of it
Yeah.
and it gives the gift for the students to just have this amazing time
Mhm.
um, as they're exploring nature. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
spending
you
all this
so much
time with
for
us.
thank
Yeah.
you, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And we'll end the episode, as always, by listening to the song From the Trees by Brandon Grant. Thanks, everybody.
I start on my path, I look around to find a spot that I can call home for a while. Walking slowly, I feel so calm. I find a spot where nature opens up her arms for me to breathe. I see the stories I can learn from the trees, the feeling, the touch of gentle breeze, knowing the land around me brings me peace, watching the world around me sets me free. I feel the sunshine kiss my skin, I hear all of the birds singing from within. I get familiar with my space, I now know how every part fits in every place for me to breathe. I see the stories I can learn from the trees, the feeling, the touch of gentle breeze, knowing the land around me brings me peace, watching the world around me sets me. I go to visit in morning, in sunshine and the rain, to see what's different and notice the things that stay the same. I get to know my teacher, the spot that gives me health. To get to know the land is to get to know yourself. To breathe, I see the stories I can learn from the trees, the feeling, the touch of gentle breeze, knowing the land around me brings me peace, watching the world around me sets me free.